This is Michael's Nissan 370z. It's got 600 horsepower, a giant wing, a bunch of holes in the back, and a big old turbo that sits right next to your feet if you're in the passenger seat, which is actually kind of interesting. It's a built car by somebody who's done it by himself for the last 5 years. And today we're gonna actually take a look and see, does it all kind of come together? Is it actually as good as what we think it is? Is it as fun as it looks? And is it totally worth having a giant wing on the back? I'm Alex, Alex.fi on Instagram, and welcome to the very first episode of Behind the Wheel. Michael's 370z pretty much has everything under the sun. Still in front bumper, bumper diffuser delete, a GTC 300 spoiler that could pretty much fit like 3, 4, maybe 5 different fast food takeouts between the amount of people you could actually sit on the back of that. That's a huge spoiler. Anyway, the block is bored and reinforced. It's got custom pistons, K1 technology connecting rods, head studs, main bolts, oil pump and pan, ported intake. It's turbo. It's mid-mounted no less. It's a 6467. It has a turbo back exhaust. It has a bunch of other stuff. It's got Coney yellow GFX springs. It was built by himself. It's got the potenzas on it, which once it gets up to temp are absolutely fantastic, no less. And of course, it's got the good old tile wastegates, a 50mm blow-off valve, intercooler, CGM fuel return system, 1000cc injectors, and we're not done, okay? You also got a Z1 unsprung clutch, single match flywheel, upgraded poly motor trans and diff mounts, and diff cover. And if that's not enough, it's got a bunch of gauges in it. And most people would want to talk about the wing. When you look at a 370z or you just look at big wings in general, it's like a love or hate relationship as to whether they actually belong on a car. And this one is technically below the actual roofline, which is good. And it actually doesn't look that bad. It's within the fenders and the arches of the car, which is probably why it flows so well. Now this car is, well, you may have guessed, yellow, which is usually an uncommon color, especially for a 370z. And besides the fact that we have 9 holes, we're not gonna look. 9 holes, it looks really actually pretty good. I think it looks nice and it's sturdy. Let's go for a drive. It has normal seat belts, automatic wind. Help me, Tom Cruise. Oh, that clutch is a stiff boy. Okay. There's so many gauges, I don't know which one to look at. It makes me so happy. I want everyone to know before I even start this review that this clutch is gonna hurt the whole time. There's a little bit of shaking happening, a little bit of clattering. I'm assuming that's the clutch. Yeah. All right, let's go. Woo-wee! That was a close one. I love everything about the 370, the Datsun, the Nissan culture, specifically because of how cool of a history it actually has. The reason why is because even back when Datsun first came out with the 240Z, it pretty much spanked everything. I mean, it took to the teams of Porsche, it took to everything from rallycross to actual just road racing to everything in between, and it did it so well. The 240Z was insane. The inline 6 was fantastic. The 260 and 280Z followed that suit, and it did really good. I mean, even in the States, people loved it. You talk about 70s Japanese cars, and the Datsun was the way to go. And then the 300ZX came out, which had a bunch of technology in it. It got a little wide, a little heavy, and people still enjoyed it, but it never really did the same thing as the Datsun. And then the 350Z came out, and everyone loved the 350Z. I actually remember going into a Nissan dealership in Eau Claire, Wisconsin when the 350Z first came out when I was really young, because I asked my dad to stop. And I sat in it. It was a gray touring 350Z, and it was brand new. And I remember seeing the gauges, and I thought, just how cool was that to actually have in a just normal production car? I was little, so there was probably a bunch that already had it. And the 350Z kind of aged like a fine wine. It was just a car that they never really had to do much more till, and then the 370Z came out. It's been 12 years now, and the 370Z has not changed that much. So why do we enjoy them? Why Michael's 370Z? Why would you modify one of these? Especially when you start hearing word that there's probably gonna be a replacement. And I think the answer is because 350Zs and 370Zs, and specifically Michael's 370Z, is such a fun platform to build on that you can do pretty much anything you want to it, include slapping a big turbo on it. And it does it all really well. It's not shaking at the seams, it's not blowing apart on me, it's not really that bad at all, which is pretty shocking when you start talking about home-built cars. When you start talking about cars that were built in garages, I'm gonna be honest, we're probably not as good as we think we are surrounding the whole thing. Is it loud and obnoxious? Absolutely. Does it need to be? Yes. The tires do pretty well. They're still a little cold. And you need to feather the throttle a little bit on the low end side. And I'm assuming that has to do with running a little bit more of a richer mix, which the tune probably isn't super dialed in for, whereas it's probably more tuned for wide open throttle, because you can feel it right above 3. If you don't feather it, it bogs on you a little bit. But it's just a small thing in the grand scheme of things. Because if you feather it and then go, you're pretty much set. Which actually isn't that bad. When you're really thinking about it, it's not that bad. AC works, you've got a stereo, you've got everything that you want. This is actually probably more put together than like 100% of the cars I've ever built. And it feels pretty good. The lowering springs feel good. It's tight, all things considered, especially since they're not coilovers. We're cruising, and it's quiet. It's not that bad. I don't think the 350 or 370Z interior really dated that much either, because there's nothing in the car to date. It's literally just a center dash that hides away in a couple buttons and a gear. There's nothing to date. Having a single turbo also has its cons to anybody that's built one before. You are playing a game of chess, waiting for boost, which is also probably why you'd want to feather the throttle a little bit or hold it before giving it to beans. But it's pretty good. I'm actually impressed. Michael did a good job. Now, will it die? Nope. I'm a wizard. I'm a wizard. I'm sorry. All right, let's turn around and go back. Nice job, Michael. I would have never expected this.
Give me 1 second.
Max lost his headphones.
Good.
Once you get used to the clutch, it's actually not that hard to drive at all. I think the one thing I love especially about the 370Z platform was when it was made, the goal was to make a sports car that was also very daily drivable. One that could pretty much behave as well as it could as not a super expensive sports car, but also not as an entry-level sports car. And Michael's taken really good care of this car. I mean, everything inside of it is extremely clean. Everything inside of it, that person didn't even look to see that I was driving a large Nissan with a big wing. I just love everything about the car. There's not a thing that I would say is improper in here. I mean, even with the million gauges, I feel like a lot of times people have now switched to just an infotainment system with all the gauges, so that way you have more visual clearance, but they're all AEM. They're not some bunky gauges. And they all read max. You know how much of a pain it is to get those to read all the time? All the time? I'm happy. I'm happy. Let's go rate it. We made it. We made it. It didn't die. It didn't break. It didn't have a gauge fall off on me. It didn't not have AC. It didn't clatter. It didn't fall apart. This is already better than 90% of the vehicles I know that get put together by people in the garage has ever done before. And the AC works. Michael's 370Z has everything that you could put together in a function style car the right way. It's got the Enkis, it's got the meaty tires, the Potenzas. It even's got the big wing on the back. I mean, even with the lowering springs, everything about the car feels right. Driving a car that has all of this stuff done to it, it all felt good. There's no part of it that fell apart, which I am actually still blown away by. When you're looking at this in terms of an overall garage build tuner car, it checks off all the boxes. Sure, there's a couple things on the outside that probably aren't perfect. We got some bullet holes in the back. We have a little bit of hood gap in the front, but none of that matters if you can actually put it on the ground, actually drive it and drive it hard, and it doesn't break or fall apart or go into limp mode. Those are all very easy things to get accustomed to when you start building a car or turbocharging a naturally aspirated one. So how did it drive? How was the actual enjoyment? How was the execution? How was everything put together? Those three categories out of 10. We're gonna give this a 27 out of 30. This car pretty much does everything right. Everything from down to the execution to actually how it drives. And short of just a couple few pieces of the exterior, this car is pretty much ready to go. Why wouldn't you want this car? Let us know what you want us to cover next, or if you want your car reviewed, let us know in the comment section below. And if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension for your garage build or otherwise, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries, and we will see you later. Peace.